Here we go. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Mentorship 2.0. Uh, look, I just doubled down. So not only was I supposed to get Nick Harris, but I have his sister here, Nicole Harris, who actually I just met this weekend. Like I said, I've known Nick for about 12 years. I've known about Nicole for about 12 years when I talked to Nick about his family. I'm not sure, Nick, depends on what me and Nick were going through. It depends on how he brought me up during our friendship. Just real quick, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Sure. So I am actually an associate dean
Okay.
at a liberal arts college in Massachusetts, Salem State University specifically.
Okay.
And there I am an associate dean for the School of Education.
Okay.
And a lot of the work that I do is in preparing teachers at the institution and preparing those who want to work in higher education, specifically as student affairs professionals as well. So working with principals, working with faculty,
Okay.
to ensure a quality educational experience for our students and helping our students to become educators that can have an impact on the future.
You see all our mannerisms? They're all teacherish. They're all like happy. I'm talking to the kids. I'm trying to get these teachers ready. That's fantastic. My mom was a teacher for 20 years, so she was a fifth grade teacher, but she was real like laid back. Of course, being a pastor's wife and then being a school teacher, she laid back. But I see you have the energy to do. Do you enjoy it?
I do. I've been in education for 20 years.
Okay.
And I think for me, it gives me an opportunity to do the things I love to do.
Okay.
But I also get a chance to address that sort of altruistic goal that I have internally to make change and make difference.
Okay.
And I think that really drives a lot of the work that I do.
Okay. What would you say is the most, so we go through life, we want to make an impact, we want to make a difference. So where you are right now, tell me a situation where you felt you made a difference in what you do.
Well, I think that one of the more recent experiences that I've had, I had the opportunity to secure a grant
Okay.
together with another colleague, and we've launched a brand new program in the Salem area in Massachusetts. It's sort of an educator scholars of color program.
Okay.
And the goal of the program essentially is to encourage students of color in particular who
Okay.
want to go and become teachers.
Okay.
So we know that there's an overall shortage
There it is.
in the country and in particular this part of Massachusetts. So one of the things that I think has been really helpful is pulling together scholars who are excellent in their field as they thought through how to practically apply the things that they talk about theoretically.
Okay.
And place them into practice, but most importantly, having real students say, wow, I feel motivated, encouraged,
Okay.
I'm ready to push forward, I'm sticking with this.
Okay.
And as we all know, the last year and a half has been pretty tough.
It has
for pretty
been.
much everyone.
Oh my goodness. I was just thinking about the parents who had become teachers
Right.
and then had to figure out how to get access to your knowledge and your professionalism to help them guide that uncharted waters where you have to be the teacher and teach your kid and get them up and do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's been a challenge. So the same thing happens, for college students. They had to find an intrinsic motivation to continue to go, and even though some of them have their own children, some of them have had family members who've also been struggling with COVID, and I think that during this period of time, in terms of from a leadership perspective,
Okay.
it certainly required the usage of a different skill set
Mm-hmm.
as leaders to assist members of our larger community, both students and faculty and administrators and staff,
Okay.
to get through this period of time. So it required, like I said, activation of new skills and honing some new perspectives.
I got it. The home life was tough for kids and their parents, but those of you who were the product, I'm talking about the curriculum, implementing and how to get that information to the kids, so at least that year wasn't wasted on trying to figure out, because I think at some point we had to keep going. We couldn't stop. So
We did.
so this is gonna be the best part, because we just talked to Nick. We're gonna talk to Nicole, raised in the same household. Is gonna be curious to see what her perspective is on leadership, and then what Nick's was, and so where did you? So I think you tell me what your perspective is on your parents. Like, tell me about your parents.
Well, I think that both of my parents are probably the two hardest working people I've ever known.
Okay.
And they were committed to ensuring that they instilled values and a hard work ethic.
Okay.
And I would probably say that because of the ways in which they demonstrated through action,
Okay.
as well as words, that sort of moral compass, they absolutely imparted that to us as their children.
Okay.
Absolutely. I would also say, and I've said this to many people who know me, that my parents, when I think about the stories they've told me about their schooling, for example, my father grew up in Jim Crow. He didn't have access to a lot of things.
Right.
My mother was helped to desegregate a school.
Okay.
So that experience, during that period was challenging
Okay.
in and of itself. And our parents really, I think, encouraged the value of education in different ways.
Okay.
And so I think from my perspective, I really feel like most of what I've accomplished has been because I've sort of had my parents on either shoulder, encouraging me to continue to work hard, to kind of press forward,
Okay.
Despite challenges, and how important it is that we demonstrate that same moral compass
Okay.
throughout the work that we do,
Okay.
for sure.
So where do our first experiences? Where do we first learn leadership, or where do you think you did? Where did you first hey? Where do you think you learned that?
Well, I would definitely, I would say that I learned it in the home.
Okay.
My parents' form of sort of partner leadership was such that my mother, for example, who's very capable and has a lot of skills of her own, looked to my father for sort of saying, how are we going to do this together?
Okay.
And I think that her approach to choosing to follow when certain situations called for it,
Okay.
and choosing to lead when certain situations called for it, is something unspoken that I learned from her.
Okay.
My father, I remember he used to share a lot of stories with us about his own work and his own lived experience. And, a lot of the time he worked collaboratively with others. He's a brilliant man.
Okay.
When he eventually became promoted, one of the things that he shared was, how challenging it was to be promoted among equals.
Right.
And how that shift, created something that I've experienced quite a bit in my own leadership trajectory, which is leadership isolation,
Okay.
which can particularly happen when you get to a certain place and there's not a lot of folks that are in your role within an organization.
Okay.
And I remember the stories that he told me about, it's kind of lonely at the top. And I remember thinking to myself when I got to certain levels, how important it was for me to find a network beyond me,
Exactly.
beyond my organization, my institution, or within my siloed, like my area, to ensure that I was sort of recalibrating, checking in,
Okay.
getting support, advice,
Okay.
guidance that made sense.
Okay. Kind of like an accountability, like make sure I'm on the right.
Absolutely. But also support.
Okay.
I think that often when you get to a certain place, when you're a little above, starting to get above sort of middle management, part of what happens, I think, is you're getting a lot of directives from above.
Okay.
However, your reality is that you have to work with people in real time with their actual needs in the moment. And so it requires emotional intelligence,
Okay.
but it also requires finding ways to encourage and motivate folks to still be able to meet the goal from the directive from above.
Okay.
And that can be a challenge.
It is. It is. One of the things in ROTC that I learned is mission first, people always. And sometimes that gets a little difficult when you have to, or when you are leading your peers, especially when you were at the same level, and then all of a sudden, because that happens all the time. I mean, we're at the same level in the military, we're both specialists, and then all of a sudden you get promoted to sergeant. Now, technically, you're my superior, but just last week we were at the bar, you know?
Yes.
And now I got to change. So that does get difficult. I think that the military does. I think no one ever masters it. You just do the best you can with what you have, and then hopefully, you know, that person is able to carry that responsibility of being that leader and having to change their perspectives. Because now not only are you my leader, now you rate me. I'm like, hey, don't rate me for when we get at the bar. How about you rate me for So yeah, and we deal with that all the time. So okay, it makes sense. It makes sense. So do you consider yourself a leader?
I do.
And why?
Well, I think for a long time I was a manager. And from that perspective, that was about getting the work done. Just making sure that, you know, we've met our targets and we are able to demonstrate that we've gotten these goals. What I've learned over time about leadership, both from an academic perspective as I continued to get, you know, formal education, but also through the following 15 years that I was in different director roles and things like that, is that leadership requires vision.
Okay. Oh, yes.
And it requires being able to identify a future vision of what something could be, and being able to articulate to others what that vision is clearly so that they can find a way to be part of that, and helping them to find their role towards working towards that vision.
Okay.
And I think that as my mindset shifted from merely being a manager to being a leader, it also means upward leadership. And by that I mean leading people above you. How do you do that? How do you tell someone who is actually more senior than you and convey to them, here's this big idea, and here's how it can or can't work, or could we press forward further?
Right.
And or even convincing them that the resources you have are not sufficient in order to achieve that goal.
Exactly.
And being able to communicate that to them so that they too will take action.
Okay. So that is a difficult challenge to. So we get guidance from our leader, and then of course they give us our piece of the puzzle. Hey, this is what you're trying to. And so to go back to him and say, hey, I don't know if I don't think we have the opportunity to change the vision, because more likely he's getting it from up above as well.
Right.
And so this is a mission we got to complete. This is what I'm your task. So, but we are able to let him know if we have the proper resources to be able to complete the task that he has given us. And 9 times out of 10, of course, they'll let us complete it our way. But as long as we meet the task, I think they're pretty much satisfied. But you're talking from a total different, where you're actually talking to the owner or maybe the boss, and then it's his vision, and then him not knowing, and that's a big challenge, because if sometimes those in the ivory towers don't know how those in the foxholes need, it's very difficult in how to convey that. So yeah, that's a very good point. How do you feel that with the generation we have right now, with social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, how do we communicate that vision to that generation?
I think that one of the great challenges that social media has presented to us is that we need to be much more succinct about our communications,
What do you succinct?
about our approaches.
Define succinct.
So I mean more direct and simple and to the point.
Okay.
I think years ago, people used to give these sort of grandiose speeches and try to draw a picture in one's mind's eye of something and help you envision, you can see the clouds, and the shading and the blue and the green and all of that. And I think that, research shows that overall our attention spans have reduced to about 33% thanks to social media.
Thanks to social
Right? Yes. And
look,
right.
how we doing this? We going through Twitter feed, we
Right.
going through Instagram,
Right.
and if it doesn't catch our attention,
Then we miss it.
oh, I'm not.
In the age of email. I mean, how many emails does one get a day, right? So the challenge that we run into as leaders to try to communicate a vision is that we have to both be brief, but we need to be bold enough in that expression that it will stand in people's minds, but then we also have to be repetitive enough so that it stays in people's minds.
Okay.
So when I was working on my doctoral dissertation, one of the things that I was looking for at the institution where I was doing my work is to understand how people understood the mission.
Okay.
And in the conversation I had with them, I interviewed, all of these different people across the institution, chancellors, admins, directors, faculty. And the thing that really shocked me was that they kept using the same words, the same exact phrase all over this huge institution. What did they say? They said, there are no challenges, there are only opportunities. And I literally heard this from over a dozen and a half people that don't even know each other across the institution.
Okay.
And what that really spoke to for me was that this particular organization had done an excellent job at communicating its mission and vision to all levels of the organization, such that they were even saying the same phrases having never spoken to one another. And I think that, to your point earlier about in this age of social media and email, right? And people haven't really learned how to do that. There's so much information overload all the time. This is how you know you've done it right.
Okay. That's a challenge right now for my unit. Is the commander is trying to get his 3 priorities out, and for him to be able to talk to anyone at any level, from his director of operations to his executive to the airmen just walking in the building. Can they convey or repeat what his mission is, or his 3 priorities are?
Every organization that's done that well has found a way to make it something catchy, something easier with the 3 Ps or the 4 Cs,
right,
or the 6 Qs or whatever it is. But it's
right.
taking the mnemonic devices or using some visual graphic or something that helps people to remember it, as a strategy. But at the end of the day, it only if people know it can they actually enact it.
It's gonna be catchy, and that's difficult. Catchy.
It can be very catchy.
For this generation behind us, if you ain't got the most, what, I'm lit? Is that one that's out? I'm lit, that's I'm on fire, so yeah, you do have to make sure that it's catchy, maybe a little trendy, but more so some of the brands that have been able to be here around for years using the same ones, Just Do It, Burger King, you can have it your way. All the catchy statements that have been around means they did it right, and everybody speaks to it. So, so 3 things, 3 words that describe your leadership, either mantra or leadership, characteristics. 3 words.
I'm going to say first, agile.
Okay.
I'm going to also say strategic.
Okay.
And finally, I'm going to say justice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Agile.
agile.
Yeah.
You know, doing the kind of work that I do, if I only take one approach to doing something, I'm never going to be able to move anything forward.
Right.
I do in fact, I do too many different kinds of things. So does my team. I have nine direct reports.
Right.
Who have disparate responsibilities, and every area needs to be managed differently. So I literally have to be agile
Okay.
in terms of using different strategies
Okay.
to get to folks, which gets into the strategy.
Okay. Okay. I like the way you okay. Go ahead. Strategy.
So in terms of strategy, the old saying that if you keep doing the same thing the same way, you're going to keep getting what you always got.
Right.
So it's very important that when I have an issue that comes up or a problem, that I always ask people, let's sit down, let's talk about what is the issue at hand?
Mm-hmm.
How do we address that issue? But most importantly, how did we get here and how can we prevent this from happening again?
Exactly.
Such that every time we have a problem, we can get to a strategic approach to managing it. And so by doing that with each person and documenting, I have a little parking lot where we park ideas that we don't have time to work on right now, but we know that we need to get to them. And part of what often happens is that I start seeing a pattern emerge out of the parking lot.
Okay.
And so after a time, when I see that there's a pattern emerging, or I can see that there is an underlying symptom that's present, that tells me that we need to elevate that topic or that issue higher on the list of priorities, and it can get out of the parking lot faster into our actual workloads.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So I think strategy, I'm very big on not wasting resources and energy. I mean, what we have is finite. So we have to use it strategically. And then justice. I think that we often talk about fairness and equality a lot.
Right.
But the reality is that everyone in an organization comes with different skills, different gifts that they can offer, and come from different spaces. And the work that we do is, in my field in particular, is designed to often needs to respond to issues that are happening out there because of systemic injustice.
Okay.
So from that perspective, placing justice as, our goal is equity at all times. Our goal is to ensure that we are looking at the higher purpose at all times.
Okay.
And that higher purpose, I think, keeps us all keeps us all with our heads up.
Right.
Looking towards the future and working towards something that's altruistic. And I think when people feel like they can get behind something that's of value, that's altruistic, that's important, people are willing to hang in there with you longer and to move forward.
A little bit longer. I like your comment of looking forward to the future, because nowadays, you know how many people we have entertained on their social media. Just I need to start looking up. So last question: are leaders born or developed, or made?
The age-old nature versus nurture.
You know what I'm saying? What's your answer? It's gonna be curious to hear. I'm just letting you know it's gonna be curious to hear, because number one, the three things you gave for leadership characteristics is totally different what Nick gave.
Okay.
And they come from the same family. They're brother and sister. So just let you know how the different perspectives, and as you navigate through your life, on what you pick up and what you're able to articulate. So leaders, born, made, developed, born and developed.
I really genuinely, I believe that there are some folks that have innate leadership characteristics, but I believe that any person can develop, because I see leadership as a skill that can be developed. Does that mean everyone's going to develop to the same degree? No. Howard Gardner talks a lot about multiple intelligences, and he talks about the fact that some of us have kinesthetic, body intelligence, and people who have, reading oral intelligence, or those who can read, or those who can do music or play sports or whatever have you. And some of those intelligences lead themselves to the kinds of traditional leadership that people appreciate. A great speaker who's charismatic and can do this and that and the other. But what about all the leaders that are behind the scenes that we don't see? Right? I mean, there's so many people who are leading and their work is not transparent to the average person.
Right.
And infrastructure is a perfect example of that. So if you have folks that can develop into leaders, leaders in the field, whatever field that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
industry, all of those things, then I think it's possible that people can develop those skills if they really want to.
Okay. Very interesting. Because if you heard Nick's interview, he said the exact same thing. He said they can be developed. They're not one that can be developed. And his analogy of behind the scenes, he used just every day, being consistent.
Mm.
Coming in and just kind of getting your team ready and showing them which is what he basically, you guys said the same thing. That leader's behind the scenes leadership skill set, as opposed to being, in front of, out in front and leading the fight. No, okay.
I believe a good leader is removing barriers so that the people in their team can get their job done. That's what a leader does.
Okay. So we started out Nicole, but they funneled down to the same answer of a leader being developed. So thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So just another episode of Leadership Mentorship 2.0. Going through the process. So please comment, positive, negative, on Nicole's interview, things that you agree with, things you don't agree with, and then let's just have a discussion about it and see what we can do to at least have a conversation to mentor and lead the generation following us. They're very social media heavy, Facebook, YouTube. So if we can use this platform to speak to them on a different level to kind of educate them, I think we're moving in the right direction. So again, thank you, ma'am.
It's a pleasure.